So nationalism has come up a lot in the news lately, especially ever since President Trump self-identified as a nationalist.
On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists.
Which doesn't seem like a big deal when we take a look at the definition of nationalism, which is patriotic feeling, principles, or efforts. But then again, Trump didn't seem to take that question too lightly.
Now people are also
I don't
saying
know why you'd
that
say
the
that.
president.
That's such a racist
There are
question.
some people.
Racist? How is that racist? Are you sure, Trump?
That's such a racist question. Honestly, I mean, I know you have it written down and you're going to tell me. Let me tell you, it's a racist question.
Well, okay then. So let's talk about nationalism. What it means to be a nationalist. Does it have anything to do with race? Is it a good or a bad thing? This is Q&Facts. P.S. You might be questioning if I was driving for some of this video, and of course not. I am all about safe driving. With that out of the way, let's talk about nationalism, what it means to be a nationalist. Does it have anything to do with race, and is it a good or a bad thing? Before I get into that though, I do want to point out that nationalism can be applied to economic, social, and political theory. There's a lot to it, and this video is only an overview giving you the most basic information you need to know. Oh, look at that, it's dark. Nationalism as a concept has been around for a long time. We could trace it back to the 1st or 2nd century AD. However, the term nationalism has only been around since about 1844. And the idea behind it is that a nation should be able to govern itself without outside interference or outside influence. Now, a nationalist would be a person who subscribes to these beliefs. Now, this all sounds well and good until we start to look at what nationalism requires to exist. You see, for us to distinguish outside influences or outside interference, we have to have our own national identity so that we can separate us from them. And a lot of times a nation will start to identify based on similar languages, similar cultures, beliefs, religions, skin color. And throughout history, we've seen nationalism result in a lot of terrible things.
Nur zu denken an Deutschland, an Volk und an Reich, an unsere deutsche Nation. Unser deutsches Volk siegt ein! Siegt ein! Siegt ein!
See, Hitler and the Nazi Party used nationalism to create a German identity, but they were able to control what that identity was. It meant that only people of a certain hair color, of a certain eye color, of a certain belief were actually Germans, and everybody else was, well, just subhuman. It's also important to note here that patriotism isn't the same as nationalism. Patriotism is having pride in one's country. Nationalism is a whole nother beast. So to answer the question, does nationalism have to do with race? Yes, it absolutely does, especially when a national identity begins to separate one race from the other, saying that one of those races doesn't belong to that nation or isn't a part of that nation's identity. So then that leaves the question, is nationalism a good or a bad thing? Well, by itself, nationalism isn't inherently bad. However, we can look through history and see that almost every single time that nationalism has come up as a topic, it results in terrible things.
They began their campaign by dehumanizing the enemy, calling them snakes and cockroaches.
ubwicanyi bw'inyenzi inkotanyi ni ukwica nabi umuntu ni ukumwica bamujomboramo imibiri bamuvanamo se ingingo zimwe na zimwe bamuvanamo byo n'imitima imyijima ibifu nicyo ejo nabwiraga nti inyenzi inkotanyi
mu mutima mumenye mu babasekera n'agatwenge k'uburyarya ni abagome kabuhariwe barengeje ubwenge noneho ntawamenya ukuntu noneho umuntu azabita.
In Rwanda, where the oppressed Hutu had become the oppressors, it was easy to stoke the fires of hatred through fear, especially after the successful invasion of the RPF army of mostly Tutsi refugees.
So we can say that nationalism isn't good, but if it's bad, that's because of the way that people choose to use it. And unfortunately, the way that people choose to use it is as a tool to unite the country while stoking fear against a certain group of people and victimizing that group of people, all under the guise of patriotism.
I love it. You know what the word is? I love our country. I do. You have nationalists, you have globalists. I also love the world, and I don't mind helping the world, but we have to straighten out our country first.
And guys, that might be the scariest thing about nationalism, is that it sounds so good And oftentimes we don't realize how we've been tricked until it's too late. Have a good one.